This just happened tonight, not to me, but to my wife. I'm writing this from a McDonald's parking lot, 3 blocks from the police station where my wife is giving her statement. She works at a front desk at a hotel. It's a busy one, given more to the business types. She usually works until 11 or midnight, and being the protective type, I'm usually there with her. But not just for that reason, but the Wi-Fi, coffee, and TV. 3 weeks back, I'm there watching an episode of Justified, and I meet this fellow. I got his name, but forgot it instantly. He's staying there long term, business of sorts. I don't like him. 1, he interrupted the show. 2, I can tell he's off, rambling, has a cast on his hand from what he said was hitting the wall. Talks of being sober from the drink for 36 months, but takes a lot of pills. He's got issues. He had the ambulance called last week, apparently an OD. Still there, tonight he calls down to my wife, says call the police. My wife asks if anyone's hurt. He says someone will be in the next 90 seconds. So my wife called the cops. I'm not there tonight. What I know is what she told me before she went in to be interviewed. He comes down and goes into the dining room. He's got a gun. The assistant manager goes out there, and then my wife does a couple minutes later. The assistant manager is face down on the carpet, the man over him, still holding the gun. He then sees my wife and then points the gun at her. Monday, the manager of the hotel says he doesn't want me to be there all the time. Nothing personal, he just thinks it might be weird for the guests. That's why I wasn't there. I was out with some friends. The man points the fucking gun at my wife. He hears something, gets distracted. My wife backs up and gets behind a wall. The police came in, a lot of them. She hears the man yelling, and she hears a shot. She didn't know who pulled the trigger. This primarily happened to my mom, but it has badly affected me mentally and caused me to worry. She wanted me to post this just to give people heads up that you can encounter creeps literally anywhere. This is going to be a long-winded story, but I wanted to get in every detail possible. This happened last month, and we don't actually know what happened with Jeremy in the end. I'm a 19-year-old female who's studying in a university in England, entering my 2nd year. We decided to stay in my university town the day before I was due to move into my student home, so I could get there early and move my stuff in and give me the rest of the day to relax before we started Freshers Week. The night before moving day, me and my mother stayed in a hotel located in my university town. We were greeted by a very friendly man called Jeremy. Jeremy was attractive and showed us to our room. Stayed around for about 10 minutes telling us the history of the hotel and repeatedly asked us if we needed him to unpack our stuff, which we kindly rejected. It was a Friday, so my mother and I went around town and had a few drinks. Nothing too heavy as Freshers Week started the next day, so I wanted to be fresh for the Saturday night. Before going out, Jeremy explained that he never works the weekends, so he told us to have a good night and wished me luck with the rest of my university journey. He gave me a hug, gave my mother a hug, and a slight kiss, whilst moving his hand down towards her bum, which he found weird, but brushed it off as nothing. My mom is 37 years old, but looks young for her age, and Jeremy was easily in his 40s, so we thought Jeremy may have fancied his chances with her. Moving on, my mom and I had a great night around town and watched a couple live bands, a few glasses of wine, and were a little on the tipsy side. We get back to the hotel and the bar is still open, and we decided to have a nightcap. Whilst we are having a drink in the bar, Jeremy emerges from the back room and spots us and makes a couple of jokes. Jeremy then proceeds to watch a video on his phone in full volume of a woman screaming on the top of her lungs as if she was being murdered. The screaming was blood-curdling and made me and my mom unsettled, and also another couple at the bar looked a bit concerned as well. The video went on for 3 to 4 minutes before Jeremy laughed and went into the back. When we make our way to bed, my mom takes off her shoes after having become painful after dancing in the bars earlier. Jeremy emerges from the back room and puts his arm around my mom and says, "Oh, let me help you to your room, honey. You must be wasted after all that drinking." My mom isn't actually drunk and insists that she's fine, but Jeremy persists and basically follows us to her room and proceeds to come in. But I bid him goodnight and close the door pretty much in his face before locking it. The next morning we are up and make our way down to breakfast. The young girl working takes our breakfast order, only for Jeremy to bring them out insisting the eggs were cooked to perfection, although he claimed he never worked the weekends. My mom and I are weirded out by Jeremy at this stage and check out straight after breakfast. Jeremy sees us out and says his exact words, "I'll be seeing you very soon, Christy," my mother's name. Anyway, at that time, it doesn't strike us as unusual, and my mom drives us to my new home and helps me unpack my stuff. Then she leaves in the early afternoon as she had to work that evening in our local bar. The rest of the day goes by without much going on, but that night, I'm out drinking with one of my housemates when I get a call from my mom saying that Jeremy had just came to her bar where she works. This is no coincidence, as when we were having our nightcap, Jeremy would have heard us talking about the bar where my mom works, and he also had our address which we needed to provide at the hotel for whatever reason. He had also said to my mom when she was pouring his pint that she should go round to his friend's house after her shift, which was just around the corner. This call really scared the shit out of me. About a half hour later, my mom called me and said that Jeremy had left the bar after she rejected his offer to go to his friend's house later, but Jeremy said that he would be back for her later. This was really worrying, and I told her to make sure a customer was with her as she was locking up on her own that evening. After this call, I felt sick and didn't join my friends out at the nightclubs. In the meantime, I called my dad, who no longer speaks to my mom. They aren't on bad terms, they just chose not to keep in contact with each other after they split up a few years ago. My dad is a club bouncer, but he wasn't on duty that night. I called him and begged him to just drive down there to make sure that everything was okay. My dad clearly knew in my shaky voice that I was panicked, scared, and helpless. 1 a.m. rolled around and I didn't get a response from either my mom or my dad's phone. I was worried sick and hoped that Jeremy hadn't been waiting for her around the corner and done something to my mom while she was locking up. At 1:30 a.m., my mom finally rang me up hysterically. As she had been locking up, Jeremy had pulled up in the car with 3 other men and shouted to her to get into the car for a ride. My mom declined his advances, and he got out of the car and approached her and told her that he wouldn't tell her again. He said that she had been flirting and teasing him ever since she checked in last night. She told Jeremy that this is complete bullshit and that she wasn't into him at all. As Jeremy got closer and closer, she could smell heavy liquor. As Jeremy went to grab my mom's arm, my dad pulls behind the car and beeps his horn. This causes Jeremy to go back to the car and climb back in, and tells my mom that he knows where she lives and that he'll be waiting. The car screeches off, and my dad gets out of the car and tells her that I had told him to check on her. Scared to go home, she asked my dad to drop her off at my grandmother's as she didn't want to be home alone. After that night, we never saw Jeremy again, but my mom did make a report with the police about him and gave them the full account of what happened, but she hasn't heard back from them. I'm relieved my dad turned up to the pub when he did, as Jeremy would have easily been able to get my mom into the car as she is very small in stature, 5'2", around 120 pounds. I just hope that scumbag got what's coming to him and is behind bars. My mom has been pretty badly affected by this and is only now comfortable being alone in her house. So Jeremy, I hope you rot in hell and let's never ever meet again. Many years ago, my dad, stepmother, brother, and I went to Mexico on vacation. This was around when I was 11, so my brother was 13. We all had one hotel room, but we all had separate keys, just in case we ever got separated or wanted to go down to the lobby for a snack, etc. As we were at an all-inclusive hotel, so an 11-year-old getting food alone wasn't uncommon. One day, my brother and I wanted to go back to our room to get something. Our stepmom's camera, maybe. I don't remember. This was a pretty decent sized resort, maybe 14 stories tall. My brother and I walked up to the elevator in the main lobby and saw a man in his early 40s just hanging out by the elevator. We figured he was just waiting for the elevator. No big deal, right? Well, considering this subreddit I'm posting it to, no. We pressed the call button. First clue that he really wasn't waiting for the elevator. A clue that we missed. The man got into the elevator with us, and we pressed our floor, 8th maybe, somewhere higher up. The man didn't press anything. Our second clue, which I found odd. My brother nudged me, but I already noticed. My brother and I got off at our floor, but our room was only a few doors down from the elevator. My brother and I were on the same wavelength though. We ran down the hall towards the last door by the emergency exit stairs and hid behind the plant next to the door. Thank God this guy didn't call our bluff. We watched him look down the hall after us and stood by the elevator for a minute before calling it and leaving.
The story takes place 3 months ago at a karaoke bar. My boyfriend's older sister Angie and I went out for the first time together. And we went to this bar that hosts a karaoke night every Friday night. She had a guy friend named Paul who met us there and had a crush on her. He bought us drinks the entire night. We were all having a good time. It was 2 a.m. and we were sitting outside because both Paul and Angie smoke, but I don't. But because I didn't want to stay in there alone or anything, I went with her. We found a wooden table with bench-like seats. The two of them sat at one side of the table and I was on the other side by myself, talking amongst them. Some random guy, let's call him Pete, was standing behind me 3 feet away, leaning on a wall. But he was close enough that I could see him if I moved my eyes to the left a bit. Angie is very outgoing, so as we were talking, she ended up asking him some questions. I can't remember exactly what she said because I wasn't paying attention to them, but rather the people who were talking around us. He ended up responding and slowly was approaching my side of the table. Once he got to my side, he sat down beside me. I had already started to get a weird vibe from this guy. I was talking to Angie about something, and when I stopped, Pete started asking where I was from. Since it was clear I'm not from England since I don't have a British accent. I told him I was from Canada, and he told me he works for immigration at the airport. To which I said, "Oh, nice," not showing much interest. He asked what I could possibly be doing here, and I replied by telling him that I was visiting my boyfriend. Angie was even talking about how she was here with her brother's girlfriend, and other people she was having conversations with. Pete had both his arms resting on the table, one of his hands holding a glass of whatever he was drinking, and then he moved the hand that was closest to me and put it on his lap. But being that I'm a very observant person, I noticed this and was starting to feel very uncomfortable, as Angie and Paul were talking about stuff with the other people who were outside. And because my hand was resting on my lap, he moved over the bench to be closer to me and reached for my hand, and held it really firm and hard. I quickly pulled away and moved myself over a bit, and then put my hand that he had just held on the table and held on to my drink. He put it back in his lap, and within a few minutes later, he was reaching under the table again, but this time he grabbed my knee and held it. I pushed the hand away again and repeated, "I have a boyfriend." And even Angie was like, "Dude, she has a boyfriend in case you didn't hear the first time, 3 times, we've said it." So we carry on outside for the next hour, and when it gets to 3 a.m., the bar closes. Angie and I were going to go back home, but she decided she wanted to hang out at Paul's house for a bit and drink a little bit more there. So I agreed. But all of a sudden Pete asked, "Oh, well, can I come with you?" "I'm only here for tonight, and I go back to where I live tomorrow," Angie said. "I mean, it's not my house, but if my friend is fine with it, sure." So Paul allowed him to come along with us to his place. Angie called an Uber to get us to Paul's house, and we waited at the table for the Uber. Pete then said, "We can go back to my hotel room and wait for the Uber. I'm staying right here." So Angie of course agreed, but I didn't really like that idea. So much because he kept saying how pretty we look the entire time we're going back to his hotel. And plus, I didn't know how to get to home myself, since I had no idea even where I was, so I just followed along. We get to the room and we wait 10 minutes for the Uber. The whole time Pete is full on staring at us, smirking and shit, for God knows whatever the reason was. We get to her friend's house and Pete continues flirting with me. He even rubbed my leg again when I was sitting on the floor because I wasn't feeling too good. Skip to where we all leave. Pete tells us he's gonna book an Uber for himself, so Angie and I naturally book a separate Uber to get home. But I ended up glancing down at his phone when he was quote unquote booking the Uber. He never actually booked a ride. He was just chilling on the app, acting like he was. I thought this was weird. So 15 minutes later, our Uber is outside. And Pete was like, "Hey, can I just hop in there with you two?" And Angie replied kind of hesitantly like, okay. But I thought your Uber was on its way though. And he was like, I don't know, but with the weirdest tone in his voice. He has a smoke outside the car. Just before getting in, her and I are with the car with the driver. And that's when I tell her that he never actually booked a ride for himself. We both looked at one another for a few seconds in confusion. And you could tell that now she was seeming to get a bit more cautious with what she was doing and saying with him. So the plan was the Uber was going to drop us off to first, and then take him to wherever he was going. So because of this, she asked the Uber to take us to the road before the one with our house on it, because she didn't want him to know where we lived. Because now she finally did not trust this guy. Pete finally gets into the car. I'm on the right side, she is in the middle, and he gets in on the left. The whole time I can hear him trying to flirt with her and saying some shit like, "Wanna hook up?" Then at one point he was like, "She can join in too." Angie kept saying no a bunch of times to him. And I was looking out the window because I didn't want to look directly at him at all. But when he said that, I gave him a weird look. I don't really think he paid any attention to it though. I looked back out my own window, and this is when it got a lot more weird and a lot more creepy. He kept saying he was coming home with us and not going back to his hotel. He was not letting up. Angie told him we were walking home at a certain point because she didn't have the money to pay for the whole ride, which obviously was a lie. And he was like, "That's okay, I'll just follow you home. We can have a good time." So finally, after like 10 minutes of this, she was like, "Can you pull over?" to the driver. And he was very confused by this, probably because he'd never got asked to do this. And she was like, "Please, pull over now." So the Uber driver did. Pete started to wonder why she was doing this and asked, "What are you doing, babe?" She was like, "I told you, you aren't coming back home with us. Get out." At this time, I was looking directly at him. She was getting angry because he wasn't getting out of the car. So she started raising her voice and was like, "We aren't moving until you get the fuck out of this car. And call yourself a different Uber." Pete started to get kind of serious now. I was like, "Why? What did I do? I'm sorry." She replied, "Leave." To that, he just told her he was only leaving if he gave her her number. She refused. He then told us he wasn't leaving the car until she did. She said fine, took his phone and put in some random number she thought of, and then gave it back to him. He was trying to convince her to let him stay with us. She wasn't having it. Told him bye. He got out of the car finally. She slammed the door shut and told the Uber to get away from there and take us home. I was definitely worried the next time we went to that bar and hoped that Pete wasn't there. And thankfully I haven't seen him since that incident. I always wondered what would have happened if Angie wasn't as outgoing as she was and kicked him out of the car when she did. I think we would have been in some serious trouble. I recently went to Peru for my first time out of the country and had already had sketchy experiences my first couple of days there. My friend and I were staying at a hostel and she didn't tell me the bathrooms were co-ed until she mentioned running into a guy at the showers. Essentially, it was a large open-air room with the left side for men and the right side for women, but nothing locked. And they were joined by a set of sinks that only had curtains for privacy. I waited until it was late and quiet in the hostel, thinking I could quickly shower. At the time, I thought the shower portion itself had a lock. It turned out to be either broken or non-existent. But in for a penny, out for a pound, and I was seemingly alone, so it was now or never. No sooner had I turned the shower on and undressed did I hear a pair of men enter the bathroom talking. The men seemed to pause, and I understood them to be saying in Spanish something like, "Someone is in there, in the shower." The only thing that separated me from them was about 8 feet of curved walkway, a bathroom stall door I had opened all the way to offer some faux protection, and the broken screen that was stuck open a few inches. So essentially, nothing was stopping him from walking over and seeing me, or coming right in. I didn't have a signal, so I didn't bring my cell phone. The men had gotten closer talking, and I was worried they would come in. So I threw my dress back on and pressed against the side of the little shower area, so he wouldn't see me right away if he peeked in. One of the men seemed to leave, and I heard the other one walk around to the men's side. Again, this is one large room with adjoining sets of toilets and showers. The ceiling was open air. We were not physically far apart. The band began softly crooning to me what seemed to be a Spanish romance song. I wasn't focused on the translating and missed the panicking. He went on for a while I stood there just hiding, terrified he was going to come in and well aware I couldn't leave without going past him. Eventually, he stopped singing and left, and I started crying at that point as the adrenaline gave way to relief. I have PTSD, and I've been in and had family in terrible situations, and I had been genuinely afraid in that moment. It might seem funny to some of you, but I was stuck in a bathroom in a foreign country with a man who realized a woman, presumably showering naked, was present, who couldn't leave without passing him, and he decided to stand there and sing at her. You're not romantic, you're a toilet creeper.
I'm a male, and this happened to me when I was 11. So it would have had to been 2002 in Monterey, California, at a hotel on Mother's Day. This all started in the morning, early afternoon, when I went downstairs to the lobby to watch my cartoons on the big hotel lobby TV, as opposed to the teeny one in our room. My mom was getting ready in her room, and my dad was out buying my mom a Mother's Day gift. As I'm sitting down alone, minding my own business, I feel something brush the back of my hair, and I hear, "Your hair is so pretty." I had longer hair as a kid. I had the skater look. I turn around to see a pretty big guy in his early 40s. He goes and sits down to a chair next to me. He begins to just chat about random things, asking about my mom while he continues to compliment my hair, and he takes off his hat to show me his longer hair, which was rather unkempt. He then starts to ask if I wanted to go around town with him, and saying little cliche things like, "I'll buy you whatever you want. We can go clothes shopping." That's what got me a little nervous after the constant compliments, and now he's trying to entice me with gifts. So when he got called to the desk to retrieve his key, I went back up to the room and told my mom what happened, but she just kind of shrugged it off and asked me to go get a Coke from the vending machine. I went to go get one for her when I ran into the same guy on the 3rd story of the hotel, and he calls out for me. He talks about how he couldn't find his room and that he needed help, and I said yes when I probably should have got to my mom or another adult. So after a little searching, we found his room, and then he begins to ask me to go into his room to chat, continues to ask me for help to bring his things up to the room, and after declining a few more times, he just asked me if I could open the door for him with his door key. I told him all you have to do is slide your key in the little slot, and then he asked me for a hug. This is when I got a little weirded out, so I just bolted the fuck up the stairs back towards the room, and he just starts hollering back for me, saying he thought we were friends. So, creepy hotel patron, let's not meet. This is actually my first post ever, but when I found this sub, I had to share my story. It still gives me the creeps every time I think about it, even though it happened over 8 years ago. The night of my sister's wedding, the hotel realized that they were overbooked, and my boyfriend and I suddenly found ourselves needing to find another hotel room at almost 11 p.m. on a Saturday night. We drove around for what seems like forever in the town that we were in, and finally found a vacancy at a Super 8 hotel. It wasn't in the best neighborhood, but the rooms were clean enough. My boyfriend had way too much to drink at the wedding, and he passed out cold as soon as we got into the room. Back then, I used to smoke a little, and had brought some, and proceeded to watch TV and smoke a little pot. At about 12:30 a.m., all of a sudden I hear a huge bang on our hotel room door. I literally almost fell out of bed. It scared me so bad. Someone was on the other side of the door banging, like door shaking, heart-stopping banging on the door. I should also mention that these hotels had the entryways set up on the outside of the hotel, so whoever it was did not have to come into the hotel. They could have just walked out from the street. I tried to wake up my drunk boyfriend, but could not get him awake, no matter what I did. I still to this day do not understand how all this ruckus did not wake him up. The super loud banging on the door continued relentlessly. All of a sudden, the man on the other side of the door started screaming and yelling through the door in another language, something with an island accent, and is wailing at the top of his lungs. The wailing, it was legit the most scary, haunting sound I've ever heard. I can't even begin to describe the sound of his wailing, other than that it was the most gut-wrenching sound. I was too terrified to walk up to the window to look out, and was scared to call the police because of the pot smoke that the room smelled of. I tried to call the front desk, but the phone just rang and rang. This continued for at least 20 to 30 minutes, the whole time with a loud banging, wailing and foreign words being yelled in an angry voice. I thought he was gonna kick in the door or break the window because he was going freaking crazy out there. I was so terrified that I went into the opposite corner of the room and just sat in the corner crying until it finally stopped. No one from any of the rooms came out or anything, so maybe they were all vacant. I have no idea, but it seemed like this lasted forever. When it stopped, I heard the man go down the outside stairs, so I know he left. Still, I did not sleep at all that night. When my boyfriend finally woke up, I told him about the scary wailing man, and we left as soon as he woke up. When I was checking out of the hotel, I asked the lady at the front desk had there been some incident or anything reported by anyone, and she said no. Is this a normal occurrence here? I've never been so happy to leave a hotel in my life. Scary, angry, wailing man. Let's not meet. So a little backstory for this one. My sister, 21, and I were road tripping to the West Coast to move there, and we stopped at a hotel for one of the nights to split up a 2-day drive in mid-June. We also brought along her super friendly but intimidating Black Brittany Pitbull mix pup. I should also mention that I am a 17-year-old feminine looking guy that often gets mistaken for a girl because of my figure. Now on to the story. So we got to the hotel around 7 p.m., checked in, and got to our room on the second floor. Everything was going great, but we were hungry from the trip. Since her back was hurting from the drive, I reluctantly went down about 2 blocks to get us some sandwiches. The walk goes fine, there and back, and as soon as I'm back in the building I am hungry and ready to eat. Much to my dismay, my sister informs me that she forgot things in her car and she wants me to go get them. Whatever. I take her keys and run down to the car. It only takes about 5 minutes and I'm back at the hotel again. Now, this hotel is one of those where the walkway to the rooms is an open balcony and the elevator is only accessible with a key. So I walk up to it, and as I do, I see these 2 men seemingly about to get into their car, or so I thought. One had his hand on the door of the car, but upon seeing me, they both headed towards the elevator. I've read enough of these stories here to see where the situation is headed. I decided that if I walk away, that would just invite them to follow me. I'm in a city I've never been in, by the way, so I use my key card and press the elevator button. I get in and, unsurprisingly, they do too. I think to myself, now what? And all of a sudden, I remembered that my sister had pepper spray on her lanyard with her keys. I firmly grasped it with my hand and had my finger resting on the top, ready to spray. Now thankfully, our room is a turn to the right and then a straight shot from the elevator. I get off and try to let them get off first so that they wouldn't be behind me, but they insisted I go first. Great. So now, I'm fast walking to our room, keycard in one hand, pepper spray in the other, ready to slam the door when I get in. I open the door and these dudes are right behind me, seriously like 5 inches away, probably ready to grab me. I open the door and say, "Hey, I have your stuff in the car," making sure that they hear me loud and clear, and push it past the dog into my room. I close the door and see them looking in at my sister, who was sitting on the bed, facing the door. I see them turn to walk past our room to the right, where there is only one other room. I give my sister a look like, "Holy shit, you won't believe these creeps," and lock the door behind me. I think, had they not seen my sister and her dog, they most likely would have followed me into my room and done who knows what to me. My sister also says that she saw them walk past our window and look in because the blinds weren't closed all the way. I think we heard them talking to a woman on the hall and heard them say goodbye, so they probably aren't even staying there. So creepy guys at the hotel, let's not fucking meet again. So about 1.5 years ago, I went on a school trip to New York. We tried to minimize every cost, so we would stay in hostels. They were pretty nice, to be fair. One day we came back and we were huddled in the courtyard kind of section in front to get debriefed on the following day. There were us 30 kids plus 3 teachers. The lead teacher was stood on a bench as she addressed us. This tall skinny man that was walking past stopped and joined our group. A few of the boys noticed and pointed it out. We had gotten a few questions from people on the trip about who we were, so we didn't find this weird at first. The man then saw the teacher staring at him and blurted out, "You're so beautiful." She was flattered but a little confused as he remained there as if he joined us. It was super weird. He kept complimenting her. As we filed into the lobby, he followed us. One of the teachers flagged one of the staff down and they kindly stepped in. "Hi, what room are you in?" Yeah, 3. As he tries to get past him. 3? What floor? What section? I lost my key. He runs past him and continues to follow our group. We were going to the basement to use the kitchen, so it was definitely not a coincidence. It doesn't sound that crazy, but it was just super creepy.